Girl, you've got questions. Questions about your body and how to feel good in it, about your hormones and how to keep them in check. Questions about your sex life and your whole health. Can you imagine having a best girlfriend who was also a triple board certified OBGYN? A girlfriend doctor you could call and ask or tell her anything. Someone who could show you how to live any stage of life, before, during, or after menopause, in a big, bold, and beautiful way. Well, friends, I'm your girlfriend doctor. I believe you are meant to flourish and shine, to embrace life and awaken to all its possibilities. Let's get there together. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the Girlfriend Doctor Show, everyone. Today I've got something special for you. We're going to talk about female sexual pleasure, and it doesn't matter how old we are, what stage of life we're in, and beyond, and give you some great tips on maybe achieving that elusive orgasm more intensely than ever before. So I'm thrilled to be here with you. And on the couch today, virtually, we have Debbie Marielle Elzea, who is with us here from beautiful land in Colorado, Loveland, Colorado, and I'm thrilled to have her as she is a female sexual pleasure expert. Yes, well, welcome, Debbie. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anna, and thank you so much to your viewers and listeners out there. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're going to get right into it. And one thing that you always say, Debbie, is that like female sexual pleasure is an art, a skill, and a science. So let's talk about that and how it all works together.
Sure. Yeah. Female sexuality it can be complex. And if it's not working to your dream and what you expect, you're not broken. It's just that there's a lot of components to it. And one is, the science of it. And it's the anatomy that we have innies rather than a man's outie. And that our female parts actually are homologous and correspond to like the male parts at early stages in development as fetuses. They're the same, and then they branch into the same. So there's a lot of knowledge to be involved in the science. And also female sexual pleasure is something that has not really been very well studied until recently. And that is like, for instance, men have walked on the moon for 30 years before the actual clitoral network was mapped. And it was understood that the clitoris is not like a little bean-like structure, but is instead, that is just the tip of the iceberg with as much erectile tissue as a man has, but 90% of it under the surface. So understanding the science is really important. And then so there's also the issue of hormones.
That is so true. And the clitoris in itself is several centimeters long, as well as contains over 9,000 nerve endings. I mean, it is a pleasure zone. It is one of the many erogenous zones of our body, and should not be underestimated.
Exactly. And then, of course, your expertise falls under hormones. So there's the science of the hormones, which so impact our mood and our desire. And it means it's cyclical over not only the course of the month, but over the course of our lifetime. Especially now we are in the menopause era, and our sex drive, our libido does typically fall off, but that is also healthy and normal. But that doesn't mean that we don't fight for our sexuality. We still got an average of 30 more juicy years left after menopause, and we don't want to give up that sexy time in our lives. And so that's an emphasis too for both you and me, which is how to keep things sexy, even when hormones start to drop off there.
And that's so important. I mean, this is a second career for you, right? You entered this path because you yourself struggled. You hit menopause, met the love of your life, and then what?
So I was in, I was an attorney, and I was in the IT field, and I was in a sexless marriage for about 10 years, and his choice, it being sexless, was definitely his choice. And then, got divorced, was a single mom. And then I finally meet the love of my life, who is my husband, David. And I'm so attracted to him. And then I hit menopause, like practically on my wedding day is like, and like so many of us, my organic desire just fell off a cliff, and a lot of my responses and things. And I said, oh, hell no, I am not going to let this happen. So I started doing, research into this. We started taking up sacred sexuality together. And I got inspired to pursue my passion project, which is helping other women to have not just beautiful sex lives physically, but to have the emotional connected sex lives that they desire. And I learned that there's something called sex coaching. And I invested a lot in learning how to be both a life coach and a embodied sexuality specialist, so that I could help people to, keep their relationships great, stay together, don't break up and, harm your kids. Let's stay together and rock each other's world, because talk is overrated in many ways, right? Conversation. And I think a lot of couples, if they could get the sex and intimacy part of their love life right, then they'll find so much more happiness together. So that was my inspiration, was my own menopause. And I love sex. I love sex with my husband, but it is different after this state. And so we'll talk as much as we can in this little brief time we have together about making sex connected and beautiful and enjoyable, even though, it does change with the stage of life.
It absolutely does change, of course, with our hormones, but it can be really, once you tap into that energy of sex, right? Enough of the sports sex, right? That's, enough of the sports sex. And I love to talk, and I teach this in Sexual CPR, my program, about energetic sex, right? Really tapping into the energy of sex where, two bodies become as if one. And it's an energetic connection that you can really tap into as you deepen your intimacy and your connection with your partner. And I think this is really special because we do, like you mentioned, years of a sexless marriage. I entered this realm of sexual health as well from my own personal struggles too, as well as thousands and thousands of patients that I've helped. And so, being able to revive a sexless marriage and understanding what went wrong and really understanding your own pleasure and tapping into your own pleasure. I always tell women that how can you expect him to please you if you don't know what pleases you? And I think that's just that really is like part of the foundation. So let's talk about reinvigorating our sex life. What are some steps that we can take to reinvigorate the sex life so that we do, either stay at a high level of intimacy or revive that intimacy?
Yeah, now you're talking about the art. So we briefly talked about the science, having to do with the anatomy, the hormones, the female brain. And now you're talking about the art, which is, what does this particular female need to not only feel physical pleasure, but to feel emotional connected and to get our needs met. And we often have these emotional ideas in our minds that we really want met. And it might be that we want to feel cherished and desired, but it also might mean we want to feel playful or naughty or, any number of things. Every woman is different. So that is the art, is exploring what it is that you want to feel from making love. And I really prefer the term making love whenever possible. What is it that you want to feel out of making love? And what are the themes and the scenarios and the types of touch and the types of connection and stimulation that it takes to get you there? And that is largely the art. And also why it is a learned skill, because how do you know these things if you haven't thought about it? And if you haven't practiced it and practiced asking from your partner what you want in a way that feels like we're sexual explorers, or we're doing this out of love rather than feeling like it's criticism. So that's also an art, how to get what you want from your partner in a way that is connecting and not criticizing.
So give us 3 tips on that, 3 tips to reinvigorate the sex life.
So bodies go numb from lack of touch or from trauma, if you have a history of trauma and things like that. So one of the first things would be, how do you reinvigorate your senses? And senses don't, mean just going straight for the genitals, but, how can you start with mindful touch and really increase your sensitivity to energy. Like you mentioned, I love the topic of energetic sex. My husband can make me scream with just his eyes. He doesn't even need to touch me. That's how energetically in tuned we are together. So thinking of different ways to look at orgasm and sexual pleasure rather than just like being very goal oriented. So one would be embodiment. It can, increase your embodiment and your sensitivity to energy and to touch through mindful touch practices. Anything that also will help get you out of your head and into your five senses is important too. So that might be savoring, savoring the sensual practices in life, noticing and paying attention, because even though most of us are encouraged to be in our busy minds, like in our jobs require us to be in our minds all day long, sexual pleasure takes place in the body. So helping to focus on, bodily sensations, sight, touch, taste, smell, are all going to increase your pleasure. And also a mindful self-touch practice. So, getting, especially if you're reinvigorating and you haven't been active lovemaking for some time, you might examine why. Is it the quality of my relationship? Is it kind of fear or trauma or insecurity? Get to the root, potentially in therapy or working with a coach, of why you've not been enjoying sex. Maybe it's just you haven't been getting the kind of sex that turns you on, that you like, and you have to explore that way. But it could also be that, the numbness and you need to increase your sensitivity. So there's many things. Like I said, female sexuality is complicated. It doesn't mean you're broken, but it does mean you may need to invest time and effort and even money into your sex life like you would for your career or your education or your fitness. Sexual fitness is something that if you want to keep it, is something to invest in, and you can create the magical sex life you desire, and your partner will be equally thrilled when your desire and your interest comes back.
Right. And I love this concept of our female sexuality, and really understanding what does feel good to us and being able to communicate with that with our partner. And I know the sexless marriage, there's two people in this equation. We have a couple episodes coming up with Dr. Jeffrey Life, and we're going to be talking about men's sexual health, their desire, as well as erectile dysfunction issues and how to speak with it. Debbie, I want to thank you. And also we have a special segment, Uncensored, in the Girlfriend Doctor Club for our audience with Debbie talking about enhancing the female orgasm. So really, no matter how old we are, we want to tap into the female orgasm and make it stronger and more vibrant and more energetic. It's not something we have to give up with age. Debbie, I want to thank you for being here. For our audience, check out Debbie and her coaching at moreintimacy.net. Moreintimacy.net. Thanks for being with us today, Debbie.